What's up, everybody? My name is Astonishing Pix, and welcome to my top 10 figures of the year. And this year has been pretty good when it comes to action figure releases and characters, and new releases when it comes to like media and stuff like that. So I want to gloss over, or at least go over, the figures that I personally enjoy and like, and that are my favorite. But before we get to that list, I want to do some honorable mentions or figures that didn't make the cut. So yeah, so first off, we have the Marvel Legends Moon Knight. I think that this figure is a pretty good release. Unfortunately though, I feel like I kind of regret buying this figure. I like the sculpt and everything. I just don't know why. I just feel like, maybe I wasted my money with this. The sculpt, the paint is pretty nice. I think it is missing a wash. And I think that the face sculpt or the head sculpt could have been better when it comes to like the accuracy, because it doesn't look exactly as it does in the show. But I do think that this figure is pretty cool. The articulation is also kind of limited. Another honorable mention is the Black Series Wandering Jedi Obi-Wan. Now this figure, I think that it is... I generally do like this Obi-Wan, but it looks a little bit too plain. But that's not the figure's fault though. I do like the incorporation of soft goods, but the thing that kind of does hold it back is the head sculpt. I don't think it really looks like Ewan McGregor. I mean, if you squint, it kind of does look like Ewan, but I wouldn't say that it looks like him at all. Like, I think they could have reused the General Obi-Wan Kenobi Clone Wars head, but I guess just tool the hair so it could look, like Ewan, because I think that one looks more like Ewan than this one. It is nice, but again, it doesn't really look like Ewan himself, so that's what holds this figure back. Another honorable mention is the Marvel Legends Black Panther. Now, I do like this figure, but it is kind of limited a little bit with articulation. I would like to see this figure have a better crunch. Not a crunch, a crouch pose. The accessories are kind of limited too. It's only just a pair of hands. I still like this figure. I think it could have used from a little bit of a paint when it came to the belt, so it could be more defined. And I guess another head sculpt, T'Challa head sculpt, or like one with that, or a mask head sculpt that showed the eyes, that could have been great. Last but not least is the Imperial Officer Ferrix. Like I said in my review, I do like this figure because it's an army builder and stuff like that. But there are just things that are missing, like accessories and stuff like that, customizable ability for this figure, so that's why it didn't make the top 10. Okay, so getting into the top 10. So at number 10, we have the Gaming Greats Republic Commando Boss. Now, I know what you're thinking. This figure isn't the most accurate, or it isn't, it isn't what we all expected. It isn't what I wanted also, too. But I think that this figure does work because, again, this is probably the only iteration of the Republic Commandos that we'll get in 6-inch form for a while, I guess. Unfortunately, it's not 100% accurate, but I do like this figure. Oddly enough, I do. I think the head sculpt is pretty much well done. I think the paint is also well done. The weathering that you guys see is pretty much my own addition. I also added a little coat, a matte coat, so it would look more matte. Unfortunately, I think some of the gloss is starting to peak, but this figure is pretty good. And again, I didn't like it at first, but I think that it is growing on me, so that's why it's at number 10. So for the number 9 spot, it goes to the Wakanda Forever Black Panther. Now, this Marvel Legends is, I guess, far from perfect also, but I do generally like the sculpts, and because of the movie, it also hit home for me. Unfortunately, there is some paint missing, so that's why it's not up on the list, or that's why it's not, you know, moved up or anything. And again, the articulation is okay for the most part, but I generally do like this figure, and the price point for what I paid for wasn't a lot, so I would say that this is a pretty good pick for the year. So the number 8 spot goes to the Marvel Legends Retro Symbiote Spider-Man. So this figure is amazing. The articulation is done well. It's reusing that retro Spider-Man body mold that I think that works well for this figure generally. But unfortunately, it did come out when the Renew Your Vows Spider-Man was around the corner also, so it missed out on the pinless tag and the toe articulation to make this figure better. Coming out with that, you know, it kind of pushes the figure back a bit, and you know, it's unfortunate. But again, the articulation as well, the paint is okay. It is simple, but sometimes Hasbro comes with like the paint imperfections too, so it is a great alternative if you don't have or inclined to spend the extra money on the Mafex Spider-Man, the symbiote version. That one is a pretty good figure, but you know, if you just want a regular good looking Spider-Man, I think that this is a pretty good choice for you. And again, it was my favorite for a long time, but just other figures on this list topped it for obvious reasons, and I'll let you guys know why. At number 7, we have the Black Series Mandalorian Ahsoka Tano, and I think that this figure is pretty good. It's probably one of the best sculpted Black Series figures that I've ever seen to date. The articulation could be better, but I think that it does really look like Rosario Dawson and the Mandalorian look. The robes and everything look pretty well sculpted, and the engineering is also pretty interesting because, you know, as you can see, she does have baggy clothes, but you know, they somehow make it work by giving her like a little bit more than 90-degree knees, and she does have that rotation at the bottom, and she does have thigh swivel too. It's pretty well hidden. It also has great, well, not great, but it has good butterfly joints. I wouldn't say that they work that much, but you know, I think that this figure is good looking by nature, so that's mainly the reason why it's in my top 10. So my number 6 spot goes to the Marvel Legends Amazing Fantasy Spider-Man. Earlier when I got this figure, I proclaimed that this is probably my favorite Spider-Man figure out there. And unfortunately that has changed. More to that later, but you know, this figure it's a new sculpt, and I think that there are some other figures that are now using this sculpt too, but I think it does work for this Spider-Man, how it's not super muscular, but yet you could kind of see the muscular stuff right there, you know. The definition is still there. The sculpt is still there. Unfortunately, I'm not a first appearance Spider-Man fan myself. I mean, it does look pretty good, and it's amazing to see how, you know, the first appearance Spider-Man looked versus what we have now. And it's a great evolution, and I think that, you know, for what it is, it's a pretty good figure. You can get him into a crouch pose and most poses that, you know, Spider-Man should do. The shoulders are a little bit tight though, and I'm scared to like chip the paint on the shoulders because I've seen, you know, that, you know, some of the web lines could get damaged or something. So, but then again, he is my number 6, so yeah. So at number 5, we have the Black Series Death Watch Mandalorian, and as you can see that this figure is pretty much almost 1-to-1 with the screen accuracy when it comes to the sculpt and everything, the look of it. Again, the only thing that's missing, I guess, would be weathering and stuff like that, but Hasbro could really do some amazing sculpts when they have the budget, or when they just care enough to, you know, make a new sculpt. And I think it's just amazing how well sculpted. You can see all the creases and stuff like that of this figure, the boots. It's amazing. It's pretty well articulated too. The helmet sculpt is amazing. It's better than what the Mandalorian Loyalist release that they came out with a year ago or something like that. Again, it is pretty good, and the jetpack is also great. But yeah, it's a good pick, and I hate for you guys to miss out on a good figure. Pick it up if you guys have the chance. So at number 4, we have Black Series Dark Trooper. Now, I don't think that there should be a lot said when it comes to describing why this figure is at number 4, other than, you know, it's sculpted amazing. You know, it's pretty much 1-to-1. I think that this is probably another example of the Black Series team doing amazing work when they care enough, or when I guess they have a better budget. Unfortunately though, it is a deluxe release, which means it comes at a higher price point than what you would expect. The accessories are pretty good. You know, it comes with rockets, and it comes with a gun, 2 separate hands, and it is sculpted and again articulated fairly well. The only thing I guess that holds it back is the chest area. It is an overlay, and the figure, you know, it's glossy, which is accurate too, but it also is a fingerprint magnet, and I feel like the glossiness might erode away over time if you handle it too much. I've seen that happen to some glossy figures, such as the Death Trooper. I guess the glossy coat wasn't enough, but you know, with all that said, I think that this is a pretty good number 4. At number 3, we have the Medicos Joseph Joestar. Now, this figure has come out, or the initial release was, I'm guessing, a few years back, but I think in 2022 there was a reissue, or that's when I got it at a good price. So, you know, earlier this year I got into the JoJo anime, and you know, I thought that it was an amazing series, and I think you guys should check it out. But you know, after watching the show and everything, I had an idea of who my favorite JoJo was, and you know, I started looking up figures of the show, so I managed to pick this up at a good price, and I guess it was a reissue too. So I think that the sculpt and the paint is amazing. I think it looks pretty well. I am scared of breaking it though, because it does feel kind of fragile, as most imports do, unfortunately. The articulation also is kind of limited. I think it's better than most releases, most Marvel Legends at least, but it is kind of hindered somewhat. But I guess that's mainly due to the funky sculpt and the art, you know, the art it's based off of. That is my number 3. So at number 2, it is no surprise that I have the Medicom Mafex Amazing Spider-Man Classic version. And you know, I missed out on the first release and other releases of this figure, you know, to the Ben Reilly, to the Symbiote Spider-Man, and you know, I wanted to see what the hype was about this figure. So I finally hit the trigger and got myself the reissue, I guess, and I would say that it did meet those expectations that I had, you know, when it came to the sculpt, the articulation, the paint. It's just an all-around amazing figure, and I do think that it is warranted to say that Medicom does make the best Spider-Man figures. Like I said before, the Amazing Fantasy Spider-Man was my number 1, but unfortunately for him, the Mafex beat him out. Unfortunately, this figure did get beat out at the number 1 spot by the next entry, or the next spot on the list. My number 1, my top pick of the year, probably the one figure I've waited most for a while, and I've been wanting to get for the longest time. The Lim Toys RPD Officer. Now, this figure I believe is my favorite figure of the year. I know it was technically released last year, but I got the second batch and that took probably like 6-7 months to ship out to me. I had begun to lose hope that this figure would ever release, that I probably got scammed or something. I got it from 5K Toys. It was foolish of me to think that it was probably, it was a scam or something. I know that there are a lot of people who trust 5K Toys, and I know that a lot of people have gotten toys from them, but this figure was set to release like December or January when I pre-ordered it of 2021, I believe, and it kept getting pushed back, and every time it was pushed back, or like say it was supposed to come in December, I emailed the 5K Toys and asked them if it was ever gonna come, and then they say, it got delayed because of certain reasons, and we haven't heard back from the factory yet. And so I waited. I'm like, okay, it'll probably be released next month. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. And I've also, again, same happened for the last 6 months. February came, I got the same answer. March came, April, May, June, July. I emailed them monthly to see if there was any update on this guy, on his whereabouts, or when this figure was gonna release. And I already paid a deposit for this guy, and I was like, man. And I saw Empire Toy Shop get them when I pre-ordered him from 5K Toys, and I had a chance to I guess get him, but I already put in my deposit, so I had to wait for a while. And again, it was such a long wait, it getting pushed back so many times until I got him around September. And when I got him and finally the payment processed and everything, I was so happy to I was excited to finally get this Leon. And I probably Resident Evil 2 Remake is probably one of my favorite games out there. I know that Resident Evil 2 was a pretty popular game in its own right, and I just needed a Resident Evil figure. And at that time, around 2019, when I got the game, I was after I played the game and fell in love with the franchise and the the whole lore behind the Resident Evil stuff. I was also looking for figures, but at the time there wasn't anything available other than those McFarlane or NECA. I think it was NECA figures of Resident Evil, but they were really old and I guess outdated, because they were all more like statues rather than actual action figures. I knew I just had to get him. I know that I think Damn Toys was putting out 12-inch versions of these guys, but I couldn't afford to buy those figures. I opted to wait, and I know that there are some other companies with an Ada Wong, and I hope that Lim Toys or maybe another company would release Claire Redfield at some point in the future. Unfortunately, I did get the A version instead of the S version. I think the S version is basically the completed version of this guy. So yeah, the hype for me was there, the love for the figure and the franchise was there too. It's long awaited. I guess this was my holy grail for the longest time. So now that I have it, I'm pretty happy to say that this is probably my favorite figure of all time. Until probably another new figure or a better one comes along in the future, but for now it is. So as you can see, these are the finalists of the year, and the other figures on this list, they're also my favorites of the year. But again, it is kind of unfortunate that only, I guess, imported figures made it to the top of my list this year. Domestically, Hasbro and I guess other companies could do well, and they have done well. They have done amazing figures, I'll give them that. You know, they did make it into my top 10, most of them. But unfortunately for them, the imports managed to beat them out. And I guess it is kind of unfair because, you know, the imports are higher price, you know, they're more, I guess the quality is better in most ways. And I guess it is kind of unfair to the domestic figures. But I don't feel like I would do like a domestic, another top 10, because again, I already did these and I didn't get a lot of figures that I would say that I enjoy. Do you guys, well, it is my list, so I would say, do you guys agree with my choice? And again, it is my choice, so I would like to hear what you guys have to say. I want to hear what are your top 10 figures, or maybe your favorite figure of the year is. It has been a crazy year, and I think next year we're set to see a lot more great releases. And I think next year we are, you know, bound to hear many other great releases, more picks. I'm hoping to get that Mafex Batman or Mezco Batman. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe. Make sure to check out my other platforms such as Instagram and Twitter or TikTok. But yeah, guys, peace.